Hi, everybody. My name is Quinn McLaughlin, and I am the owner and operator of MJR Electric. I'm just taking a moment here to do a quick video kind of explaining a little bit more about electric vehicle charging for residential applications in single-family homes. We get a lot of questions and educating a customer when they first buy a Tesla or buy their electric car. Unfortunately, the dealerships don't educate their customers on how the car charging works, and they're left to figure it out afterwards, and sometimes it can be fairly expensive. So I am doing this video just to kind of educate everybody who wants to watch it with regards to how electric vehicle charging works in a house. So let's dive into it. If you don't know who we are, we're MJR Electric. We're an electrical contracting company here in Vancouver, British Columbia, and we do lots of installs around Vancouver. So what I'm going to talk about first is most houses, they have, in Vancouver anyways, 100 amp 240 volt services. And for a lot of people, they don't understand the concept of what their electrical capacity is in their house, and it can cost quite a good amount to have it upgraded to 200 amp and to have it changed. So what I'm going to do in this video is explain a little bit about what that looks like, what a service looks like, how you can gauge it in your own house, and what your options are. So 100 amp service is pretty straightforward. When you look at a panel in your house, I'll see if I can find a photo of it. So when you look at a panel in your house, you'll see here, this is a picture of a panel. Right here is your main breaker for the panel. So this will say, it'll have a number on it. It'll say 100, it'll say 200, it'll say 125, maybe you'll have a 150, but for the majority of panels in British Columbia, it's 100 or it's a 200 amp. So if you have a 100 amp panel, you'll know when you go to your main panel in your house and you look at that, if it's 100 or 200 amp. So I'm not addressing the 200 amp panels. The majority of 200 amp panels are going to have space for electric car chargers. So if you have a 200 amp panel in your house, you are very blessed. This video is more speaking towards people who have 100 amp or under in their house. So if you have a 100 amp charger, what are your options? A lot of people don't really understand. So if you have a 100 amp panel and all you have is your single family dwelling house, no suites, you've got one oven, one dryer, no hot tub, maybe some electric heat, maybe not. Maybe if you have a gas furnace, then for sure, you have space for an EV charger. Now, if you have a 100 amp panel, you've got AC, you have a suite downstairs with an additional electric oven, then you're not going to have any space on your 100 amp service. If you have AC or a pool and a single family dwelling that's just yours with one oven and one dryer, you don't have space for an electric vehicle charger on a 100 amp service. So what are your options? There's a few different options. The best option that you can do is a 200 amp service upgrade. So what is that? So let's go here. I'm going to take you to BC Hydro's website. So it explains this very, very well. A 200 amp service upgrade is going from that 100 amp panel, and then we got to upgrade everything from basically the power pole from BC Hydro and install 200 amp rated lines. So what does that mean? Like 100 amp and 200 amp. So if you can imagine a water pipe is the best way to explain it. 100 amp is like a smaller, let's say 3/4 of an inch water pipe. You can only get so much flow through that pipe. Whereas a 200 amp or a larger pipe would be like a 2-inch. And you can get a lot more flow through it. So people don't understand when you're talking about amperages, you can't just add 200 amps to your current, whatever you have in your house, because the wires are too small and they will melt. So a 200 amp service is changing them all the way back to BC Hydro's connection. And that's upsizing the conductors, that's upsizing your meter, that's upsizing your meter base and the cable between the meter base and the panel. What does that look like? Okay, so there's a few different services in Vancouver that you'll see what's called an overhead service. You can see the picture of this right now. This is something that's coming up the side of your house, and you can see the lines will attach and go across. Let's see if I can show you. This is another example. This is a very old overhead service here, very not legal, but this is another example. This is a good example of an overhead service that's a 200 amp. You can see new meter base here. Here's the old meter base. And then the panel and the cable go down inside, and the panel's on the opposite side. And then this comes up, and then the 200 amp connection is now sitting above the house. So that's a better picture. You can see the meter base, and then BC Hydro comes and connects to this, and away it goes. So that's what an overhead service looks like. This is an easy option for a service upgrade. A few things to consider here before I dive into what the pricing looks like. BC Hydro has a weird rule. It's called a 1-to-4 ladder ratio. And I'm just going to see, you can go to this website if you want to read it. It says all the specifications for electricians on where to install these services, but it'll give you education. You can go right to the BC Hydro website if you Google 200 amp service upgrade guidelines. So the ladder ratio is a huge one. 90% of the properties in Vancouver where their house beside a house, they have their old service right in between the two houses. That's no longer allowed because BC Hydro has this rule where they need a 1-to-4 ladder ratio. So that means if their ladder is up 30 feet, they need to have 5 feet to lean their ladder up against your house to get up and do the connection. So what does that mean? Usually the fence and your property line ends, your edge of your house, the edge of the fence and the property line is about 3 to 4 feet max to the edge of your house, and they will not allow it if it goes over into the other property. So what happens in this case? If you have a house like this, it is more of an expensive install, and what we have to do is called installing a private pole. And what a private pole looks like is looks something like this. So these pictures kind of show it. Here you go. Here's a private pole. You can see, so we have our overhead coming up, our meter base is here, and then we actually go from here, we got to go underground to the house, whether that's 50 feet, 100 feet, whatever. We have to dig a trench about 24 inches down with sand, and it goes all the way towards the house. And I don't have a better picture of that, actually. That's probably the best picture. And then the panels inside of the house. So if you can imagine, this is a lot more expensive than the first one that I showed you. So to give you an idea, if you're wanting a 200 amp service upgrade for a pole like this and going underground into your house, it can cost anywhere from we're usually around about $12,000, and that's including the pole, that's including the trenching, the permits, the new panel, the backfeeding of your old panel, installing the EV charging circuit, depending on where it is in your house. Doing all of that is around $12,000. It's expensive, but in retrospect, which I'll talk about in a second, well, I'll talk about it right now. In retrospect, $12,000, what happens is it actually raises, by doing this, by upgrading your electrical to 200 amp, by changing all your breakers out and having a certified electrician do it, you're raising your property value by about $20,000 to $30,000. So there's a lot of value in actually spending the money to do it properly. And then what is also nice is because it's getting hotter, climate's getting hotter in the summertime in Vancouver, AC is becoming popular. Now that you have a 200 amp service, you're more than likely going to have the space to have a electric car charger and an AC, or potentially 2 electric car chargers in the future. So keep that in mind, adding value to your property and adding value to your comfort in your home. So this setup here is roughly around 10 to 12. The setup for the overhead service, which I'm going to show here, this picture here. A setup for this is probably closer to 45,000, and it's a little bit cheaper, easier to do if we have that space with the ladder ratio. This is what we would recommend 100%. And that'll give you the 200 amps. So you're looking about 45 to 5 to do this. One thing I'll mention too, BC Hydro does charge a charge for running their lines from this service here that we've created to their pole, wherever their pole is out on the street, charge around $1,300 for that. The last example that I'll show you for a 200 amp service upgrade is what is called underground. I have that picture there. But I want to take you back to the BC Hydro website. So this is a good resource. Underground requirements. So you can see here, this is a great little picture. So this, now there's a few points on this that I'll talk about. This conduit is underground to the BC Hydro connection, which is usually about 50 feet by the front of your driveway somewhere. So looking at this picture, a few things I want to talk about. If your house is built before 1983, you might not have a conduit underneath. Because back in the day, what they used to do is they would just bury a cable directly. So what does that mean? That means that you cannot pull a cable through that cable because it's surrounded by dirt. It's buried in the ground about 2 or 3 feet down. There is no way possible that you can change that cable or upgrade that cable. So if that is the instance in your property, your house is older than 85, typically if it is around that 80 to 85 mark, we'll call BC Hydro, get them to come out and verify that you do have a conduit, or if it's underground burial. If it's underground burial, then you're looking around the same cost as a private pole. It's probably about 10 grand because we have to do the trenching again out to the BC Hydro service box. That service box might need an entry put into it from BC Hydro. So you're looking around that $10,000 cost on our end, plus the $1,000 for BC Hydro to do their upgrade. Now, that's only if you don't have the conduit. If you have the conduit, you are way better off. So you see this 2-inch conduit after 1985, 1990, they started installing this and making this a standard that they needed a 2-inch conduit from their connection box all the way, or sorry, a 3-inch conduit from their connection box to the meter base. That being said, if your house is, older than 1985, you probably have this, and it makes it a lot cheaper, easier for you to get a 200 amp service upgrade. So why do I mean that? Because all that happens is BC Hydro comes in a day, we change out this meter base to a 200 amp if it's not a 200 amp on your house already, and then they pull new 200 amp lines, connect them. And what we do is we have all the pre-work. We have a new 200 amp panel just on the inside here. We either replace the one that you have or put another one beside it. And then you're good to go. So this here costs about $3,500 to do in total, because we're doing a lot less work on our end. All we're doing is changing the meter, changing the cable between the meter and the panel, installing a new panel. So those are kind of the 3 scenarios. Again, keep in mind, this is going to increase your property value if you go this way. Now, what if you don't have the kiddie pool to spend on a 200 amp service upgrade? There is 2 other options that you can use, and I'll go into detail what that is. First option, for most people, and just keep in mind, like 200 amp is going to be the best way to do it for your house, because you're considering you're raising the value in your house. You have potential space for more than one electric vehicle, for an AC unit, all that stuff, and for a suite, for more expansion on your house in the future. So keep all that in mind. So the next step would be called what's a DCC. I'm just gonna pull up my website. We have DCC devices. And what does that mean? It's like a load management system for electric vehicle car chargers. So this here is what's called a DCC 9. You can get a 10 or a 12, all kind of the same thing. It's a load management system that you put onto your 100 amp panel. It'll monitor the main service. And then what will happen is, when your service is really high, it will cut out the chargers. So say if you got your oven, your dryer, your electric heat on, maybe a few other things in your house. When your service gets to 80%, it knocks out the charger. You don't need to do a service upgrade if you use one of these. So you can still have your 100 amp panel. So if you have like a suite with 2 ovens, 2 dryers in your 100 amp panel, and you don't want to do a service upgrade, this is a good option. However, these do cost for the install. They're about $2,500 with this, the labor, and the install of the EV charger, depending on how close the EV charger is to the panel. And you know, for an extra $1,000, if you have one of those underground conduits, you can go with a 200 amp service, right? So just giving you an idea of what the costs are. Alternatively, the third option and the cheapest option, which sometimes we can get away with, is what's called a transfer switch. So this transfer switch is rated for 30 amps, 240 volt. What it does is it can toggle one of your loads in your house. It would either be your dryer or it could be your AC unit. We typically don't do it on AC just because the AC units don't like it. But on your dryer, hot water tank isn't a good example, actually. We usually use your dryer. So you can install this, and what happens is you either have your dryer on or you have the charger on, or you have them both off. So you can toggle between those 2 loads. What that means is it takes it means that you cannot or you do not need to add like you can get away with 100 amp service is what I'm saying. You don't need to upgrade to 200. You install one of these. This is about the cheapest option. We do these for around $1,200 to $1,500, depending on how close your charger is to the panel or to the location where this is going to be installed. And that's about your cheapest option that you can go with. So again, just to recap, this video was more explaining about residential chargers. We broke down underground service, overhead service that's attached to the house, overhead service that's attached to a private pole, and a manual transfer switch, which is what you're looking at now. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We're MJR Electric. We do a lot of these projects around Vancouver. We're Tesla certified. We work with Clean BC and BC Hydro Power Smart directly for the larger EV ready plans and for the residential rebates as well. We'll help you with all those applications. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. You can reach out to us on our Book Now page or through a phone call or an email. So I appreciate you checking out this video today. I'm hoping that was helpful, and I look forward to hearing from you.